Hey guys, Brandon from CrossFit South Bend. Can't make it to the gym? Are you somewhere without a gym? Do you not want to go to the gym? You can find a park just about anywhere, although the park we shot this at has quite a few amenities that you wouldn't normally see at a typical park. So we're offering up a few movement suggestions for each movement pattern with a few varying levels of difficulty. Let's cover some of those movements. So we've broken these up into movement patterns: double leg squat, bend, upper body push, upper body pull, core, single leg, and some energy system training. Let's start with the squat. First off, we have a wall sit. It is an isometric hold. Find something that you can hold slightly above, at, or below parallel. From there, we can progress into a hand supported squat. Grab a hold of something to help you with your balance and sitting back, and then use as little of your arms as possible, but enough to keep the quality. From there, we can move to varying levels of squatting. Squatting depth, find something that you can do high and low squats with, again, keeping the quality up. From there, if this isn't challenging enough, do full depth squats. Work increase of the hip below the top of the knee, full extension, and then finally working in a little bit more dynamic movement into jump squats. From here, let's transition into bending movements. So first we've got a Superman, lay on the ground, face down, squeeze your glutes and your low back to raise your arms and legs off the ground. From here, you'll transition to a Sorensen hold. If you can find something like this at the park, you'll increase the loading by moving the hands further and further away from your body. From there, you'll do repetitions, GHD hip extensions. So what you'll do is keep your spine nice and rigid, squeeze your glutes to bring your back up. Let's switch over to upper body pushing patterns. So we're gonna just stick with a classic push-up. You're gonna start with something that's elevated. You can use a staircase, anything that you can find that's elevated. You can do push-ups on a stump, a park bench, a picnic table, any of those things. And what you're gonna do throughout your progression is work your way down, keeping your body nice and rigid, increasing the difficulty as you move downward. Eventually transitioning into a push-up. Nice rigid spine, nothing moves but the arms. From here, if you can find something to do dips with, set it up, put two picnic tables together, and get to doing dips. Let's talk about upper pulling. This is usually a little bit more difficult to manage when you're by yourself, but if you can find a sturdy enough tree branch that won't break when you lean back on it, what you'll do is grab a hold of it, take a slight lean back, and then you'll pull using only your arms. Everything else stays nice and rigid. What you can do to increase the difficulty is take a few steps forward. So from there, you can do this all the way up until your feet are elevated onto something. And from that point, you can either A, go to doing strict pull-ups in a certain amount of volume, or you can start doing pull-up holds. Now let's get into core work. Now, if you're looking to express a few different movement patterns for function, you've got a side plank showing some frontal movement, you've got a front plank showing some sagittal movement, and then you've got side plank rotations. So it's a bodyweight version of doing some transverse movement. From here, let's get into some movement. We'll start off with a straight-legged sit-up. From the straight-legged sit-up, if you can find something that can support your body weight, we can do a hanging knee raise. Now, we prefer these are strict. From here, what you can do to increase the difficulty is simply drive your knees higher and higher and higher up. From there, we can perform strict toes to bar, using as little of your hips to kip as possible into a strict fashion. Let's talk about single leg movements. So what you'll do is find something low, something you can perform a step up with without bouncing off of your back leg, or at least doing it as minimally as possible. So from there, you'll simply increase the height of your step up, again, paying attention to not bouncing off of the back leg. Now, from there, you can work into reverse lunges, walking lunges, any kind of lunge variations. For this, in the sake of this, we're keeping it pretty simple. Now, from this point, you can work into pistols. You can also do these hand supported like we showed in the air squat. Now let's talk about energy system training. Now, unless you've got a jump rope, your only option really is to either walk or jog or if you can, sprint, or maybe even go uphill. I'll also say there are so many more variations to all of these movements and a lot of creativity you can put into your exercise selection, as well as ways to progress these movements to advance your fitness. You can change sets, reps, tempo, rest, and the exercise selection, but for right now, I'm going to offer up a suggestion in how to start your progression. So, where are we going to select our starting position for these progressions? We're going to start with a low number of sets. 2 to 3 sets should do. You can start with a movement you can perform a higher number of repetitions with. Let's say around 12 to 15, or a longer hold if it's an isometric hold like a plank. Something that you can do for at least 60 seconds. For the tempo of a movement, let's just use the word control. Err on the side of slower when you first start off. Choosing the rest between your sets, there are a lot of reasons to manipulate this, but for right now, rest as long as you need to keep the repetitions under control. Once you've found your starting place, stay there for a few weeks, practice the movement and the rep range. If you notice it's too easy for you, either A, raise the rep range, perhaps going from a 12 to 15 to a 15 to 20 rep range, or change the movement selection to make it more difficult, which in turn may lower the amount of reps that you can do. Whatever you do, make sure that it's challenging, but the quality is high within the rep range. Let me give you an example of a progression. Let's give you an example of a progression. We're going to start with a chest elevated push-up progression. So we'll start at a high incline under control, something that's easy. Let's say I'm doing it on the steps outside, and I choose 4 foot high because I know it's going to be easy for me. So what we're going to do is test our max reps at an easy height. Let's say once you hit that elevation, you got 15 reps, and they were good quality reps. So what we'll do for 2 to 3 weeks is hit 3 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions at that 4 foot, working on control, practice, what have you. So then we're going to progress. We're going to drop down to 3 foot on a chest elevated push-up. Now, likely what that's going to do is pull the reps back that you're able to do. Now, if you're able to stretch this out into the 12 to 15, that's perfectly okay as well, but it's okay to let it drop as long as it's challenging within that rep range. Now, what you'll do from there after 2 to 3 weeks of practicing the 3 sets at that 3 foot elevated is you're going to drop it down to a 2 foot elevated push-up. You'll do 3 sets of 6 to 9. I'm making the assumption, again, that fatigue is getting worse and that you're going to have to drop down a little bit in rep range because of it. Now, after about 9 weeks, you'll retest your 4 foot elevated max reps, and hopefully at this point you should be getting more repetitions. Now, with isometric holds, you can take something that's difficult for 60 to 75 seconds, let's say, and let's increase the time that you're attempting to hold that plank, moving from 75 to 90 seconds, attempting to move up in 15-second increments. So if you're ever having trouble with your park workout and progression, exercise selection, you can hit us up at CrossFitSouthBend.com and ask any questions that you might have.